Chapter 61. Bani Qurayzah. They had only a few hours to rest. When the noon prayer had been prayed, Gabriel came to the prophet. He was splendidly dressed, his turban rich with gold and silver brocade, and a cloth of brocaded velvet was thrown over the saddle of the mule he was riding. "Have you laid down your arms, O messenger of God?" he said. "The angels have not laid down their arms, and I return this moment from pursuing the foe, nothing else. Verily God in his might and his majesty commands you, O Muhammad, that you should go against the sons of Qurayzah. I go to them even now, that I may cause their souls to quake." The prophet gave orders that none should pray the afternoon prayer until he had reached the Qurayzah territory. The banner was given to Ali, and before sunset all the fortresses had been invested by the same army, 3,000 strong, which had opposed Quraysh and their allies at the trench. For 25 nights they were besieged. Then they sent to the prophet asking him to let them consult Abu Lubaba. Like the Bani Nadir, they had long been allies of ours, and Abu Lubaba had been one of their chief links with his tribe. The prophet allowed him to go to them. When he arrived, weeping women and children beset him, softening his stance against the treacherous enemy. When the men asked if they should submit to Muhammad, he said yes, but at the same time he pointed to his throat, implying that submission would mean slaughter. The gesture contradicted his answer and might have prolonged the siege further. No sooner had he made it than a terrible guilt overwhelmed him. Adding to a previous guilt he felt for refusing to give a palm tree to his orphan ward at the prophet's request. "My 2 feet had not moved from where they were," he said, "before I was aware that I had betrayed the messenger of God." His face changed color, and he recited the verse, "Verily we are for God, and verily unto him are we returning." Kabe asked, "What is wrong with you?" Abu Lubaba replied, "I have betrayed God and his messenger." He descended from the upper room, touching his beard, wet with tears. Unable to face his fellow tribesmen who were waiting for news, he exited through a back gate and went directly to the mosque. There he tied himself to one of the pillars, declaring, "I will not stir from this place until God relents unto me for what I did." When the prophet heard this, he said, "If he had come to me, I would have prayed to God to forgive him, but seeing that he has done what he has done, it is not for me to release him until God relents unto him." He remained tied for about 10 to 15 days. Before each prayer, or whenever necessary, his daughter would untie him, and after praying, he would ask her to bind him again. A dream he had during the siege gave him hope. He dreamt he was trapped in a stinking bog and nearly died from the smell until he found a flowing stream, washed himself, and emerged into fragrant air. Abu Bakr interpreted it as a metaphor. His soul would be burdened, but eventually relieved. Ka'b suggested to the Bani Qurayzah that if they believed Muhammad to be a prophet, they should enter his religion and save themselves and their property. But they refused, saying they preferred death and would not forsake the Torah. Ka'b made other suggestions, but they too were rejected. 3 young men of the Bani Hadl, descendants of Qurayzah's brother Hadl, repeated Ka'b's advice. They recalled the words of Ibn al-Hayyaban, the old Syrian Jew who had said, "His hour is close upon you. Be the first to reach him, O Jews, for he will be sent to shed blood and take captive the women and children of those who oppose him." But Qurayzah again refused, saying, "We will not forsake the Torah." So the 3 youths descended from the fortress that night, declared their intention to embrace Islam to the Muslim guards, and pledged allegiance to the Prophet. Only 2 others from Qurayzah followed them. One, Amr ibn Suda, had never supported the breaking of the pact and formally dissociated himself from it. He now proposed they offer tribute to the Prophet, but by God I do not know if he will accept it. They refused, saying it was better to die than pay tribute to the Arabs. Amr left the fortress, passed the guards as a Muslim, and spent the night in the mosque. He was never seen again. The Prophet said, "That is a man whom God saved for his faithfulness." The other, Rifa'ah ibn Samawal, escaped and took refuge with Salma bint Qais, the Prophet's maternal aunt. It was in her home that he entered Islam. The next day, despite Abu Lubaba's warning, the Bani Qurayzah surrendered. The men were bound and set apart. The women and children were placed under the care of Abdullah ibn Salam. Arms, armor, and goods were collected. Wine and fermented drinks were destroyed. The AWs requested leniency, as had been shown to Khazraj's former allies. The Prophet asked, "Will it satisfy you if one of your own judges them?" They agreed. He summoned their chief, Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, who was wounded and being cared for in the mosque. His clansmen, hoping for mercy, urged him on the way, "Do well by your confederates." But Sa'd, who had previously opposed leniency at Badr and was convinced of his impending death, replied, "The time has come for Sa'd, in the cause of God, to heed no blame from the blamer." When he arrived, the Prophet said, "Rise in honor of your liege lord." He was greeted, "Father of Amr, the messenger of God has appointed you to judge your confederates." Sa'd asked, "Do you swear by God that my judgment shall stand?" "We do," they replied. He added, "And is it binding upon him who is here?" glancing respectfully toward the Prophet. "It is," the Prophet affirmed. Sa'd said, "I judge that the men shall be killed, the property divided, and the women and children taken captive." The Prophet responded, "You have judged with the judgment of God from above the 7 heavens." The women and children were lodged in the city. That night the men remained in the camp, reciting the Torah and exhorting one another to patience. In the morning, trenches were dug. The men, about 700, according to most accounts, were brought in small groups, made to sit beside the trench that would be their grave, and were beheaded by Ali, Zubair, and others. When Huyai was led out, he turned to the Prophet and said, "I do not blame myself for opposing you, but he who forsakes God will be forsaken." He said to his people, "This is God's decree, a written massacre against the sons of Israel." Then he sat beside the trench and was executed. The last executions were by torchlight. One elderly man, Zubair ibn Bata, whose case had not been decided, was brought to the house where the women were kept. The next morning, when the women heard of the executions, their wailing filled the city. Zubair told them, "Be silent. Are you the first Jewish women taken captive? If your men had worth, they would have saved you. Remain firm in your faith. In it we die, and in it we live hereafter." Zubair had long opposed Islam, but he had once spared a Khazrajite, Thabit ibn Qais, who now sought his reprieve. The Prophet granted it, but Zubair said, "An old man without family, what is life to him?" Thabit requested the Prophet release his wife and children too. He did, but Zubair asked again, "What will they do without property?" The Prophet allowed their possessions to be returned, all but his arms. Still, overwhelmed with sorrow, Zubair begged to be executed with his people. Thabit relented. Zubair was executed. His family was freed and their goods restored under Thabit's protection. The rest of the captives and spoils were distributed among the Muslim fighters. Many were later ransomed at Khaybar. The Prophet took Rayhana bint Zayd, a Nadirite who had married into Qurayzah, as part of his share. She was very beautiful and remained in his household until her death 5 years later. Initially placed in the care of his aunt Salma, she resisted Islam, but Rifa'ah and others spoke to her about the faith, and soon Thalaba, one of the young converts, came to say she had embraced Islam. The Prophet rejoiced. When it was confirmed that she was not pregnant, he offered to free and marry her. She replied, "O Messenger of God, leave me in your care. That will be easier for me and for you."